Well, the difference between the two situations is that an absence of evidence for the boulder's existence constitutes evidence of absence because we should expect to see evidence where there is none. The grain of sand is clearly more elusive than a boulder, and so an absence of evidence would be expected even if there really is a grain of sand in the middle of the lobby. As you can imagine, there is an expectance of evidence that is proportional to the actual evidence if such an entity exists. In the case of the atheist who wants to utilize the absence of evidence maxim for proving the non-existence of things, then to decide if one should expect evidence for God's existence, where there is none, is tantamount to saying that 1. God, if he exists, would leave more evidence than what we presently possess, and 2. The area of expected evidence for God's existence has been sufficiently combed for such evidence. But this is the same thing as saying that the atheist, in order to surmise this maxim for God's existence, still has to shoulder a burden of proof for 1 and 2. Number 3. The argumentum ad ignorantiam. Most works on the subjects of logic and critical thinking are generally more careful about misappropriating the burden of proof on the wrong side of existential claims. So the question that naturally arises is, what exactly is the wrong side of an existential claim? So far, we looked at grounds for thinking why a particular claim may shoulder the burden of proof in dispute. But Moore and Parker, in their 6th edition, suggest that only the positive claimants in existential questions shoulder the burden of proof. Well, contrary to their view on the matter, Professor of Philosophy at Bemidji State University, David H. Lund, writes, quote, "The truth-tracking method of effective philosophic inquiry would lead us to believe a proposition when the evidence available to us justifies our believing it, to reject a proposition when our evidence disconfirms it, and to suspend judgment about it when our evidence neither confirms nor disconfirms it." Unquote. Lund makes the common sense assessment understood by the broad mainstream of philosophers. As Lund notes, the conclusion one draws from an absence of evidence for a positive existential claim, for example, quarks exist, does not lead one to its denial, for example, quarks do not exist. Rather, an absence of evidence or an insufficient level of evidence related to the case leads one to suspend judgment about it. Well, this means that quarks do not exist does not win by default. In fact, this unwarranted move invokes a common informal fallacy known as the argumentum ad ignorantiam, or the argument from ignorance. The fallacy of argumentum ad ignorantiam occurs when someone concludes that a proposition is true because there is an absence of evidence to the contrary. Well, for example, suppose someone believes the claim, "There are Microsoft products in the Chrysler building." We should not think that this person has a warranted belief just because she is ignorant of potential reasons for its contradictory. For example, there are no Microsoft products in the Chrysler building. In his most widely used textbook for introductory philosophy courses, Professor Ed Miller explains that the, quote, "argumentum ad ignorantiam," appeal to ignorance, affirms the truth of something on the basis of the lack of evidence to the contrary, unquote. There is no doubt that such a fallacy is rightly leveled against the theist who says, "I believe God exists because you have no reason to suggest that he does not." It is justifiable for the critic to dismiss the theist's statement here as a case of the argumentum ad ignorantiam. But this is only half of the controversy. It is not any more reasonable to say, "I believe God does not exist because you have no reason to suggest that he does." According to the best philosophical information available to us, we should return the favor and decry this claim as an argumentum ad ignorantiam. The late atheist professor of philosophy at the University of Pittsburgh, Wesley Salmon, rightly denotes, quote, "We shall regard assertions as unsupported unless evidence is actually given to support them, whether or not anyone has evidence for them. An argument consists of more than just a statement. It consists of a conclusion along with supporting evidence." Unquote. Making mere assertions about a matter without any support does not constitute an argument. Facilitating arguments entails that supporting evidence must be provided. In matters of existential dispute, no side should hold the default banner. Each side of an existential issue should supply evidence for or against its claim, respectively. Concerning the specific question of God's existence, the noted atheist professor of philosophy Kai Nielsen admits, quote, "To show that an argument is invalid or unsound is not to show that the conclusion of the argument is false. All the proofs of God's existence may fail, but it still may be the case that God exists. In short, to show that the proofs do not work is not enough by itself. It may still be the case that God exists." Unquote.